Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining me and thank you for your continued support. Right, so way back when the Labour government first got into power and they were talking about looking at the welfare bill, one of the things that they were looking at is how to keep people in work instead of going off sick. So what they were looking at was, how can we make sure that people don't get into the cycle of sickness and benefits that they think everyone's on. How can we stop that from happening? How can we prevent people from going sick in the first place? Basically, that was something they were looking at. And the problem, I had problems with that at the time, but now it's gone a couple of stages on from that, because there's one major supermarket which has was going to start a test project with the government, with the aim of trying to keep people in work longer before they go sick. I'm going to read you the article and let you know what you think, and then you can let me know down in the comments. Let's take a look. Tesco in talks to spearhead Labour's plan to solve sickness crisis. Tesco is in talks to join a government-backed initiative to keep people with health conditions and disabilities in work, as Labour attempts to stem the tide of economic inactivity that has dogged Britain since lockdown. It is understood that the UK's biggest supermarket has been approached by Charlie Mayfield, the government's worklessness SAR, to join a group of trailblazer companies that would work closely with the Department for Work and Pensions to prevent people from drifting into inactivity. Its backing would be viewed as a coup for the government after a year where they have struggled for support from the business community. Tesco is among Britain's biggest employers, with the company responsible for more than 330,000 staff. Earlier this month, Ken Murphy, the Tesco boss, warned the Chancellor against further tax rises for companies in her upcoming budget, saying, "Enough is enough." Rachel Reeves hit corporate Britain with a £25 billion tax raid last autumn. Bosses are also braced for a potential £5 billion blow from Labour's impending works rights overhaul. So Charlie, the former John Lewis boss, is leading an independent review into how employers can help prevent workforce dropouts. It is expected to recommend that companies do more to intervene in the early stages to support workers, particularly those with mental health conditions. His review is expected to suggest that employers deploy workplace practitioners who will not need to be medically trained to act as a bridge between employers and GPs. Their aim would be to provide more tailored support to workers before they are signed off long periods of time by their GPs. NHS data show that more than 27,000 people were signed off work between 5 and 12 weeks for mental and behavioural disorders last December alone. The review will also call for more intelligence sharing between employers and the government to spot trends and help inform policymaking, as well as code of practice that will set out how bosses should support employees with health conditions and disabilities. So Charlie has spoken to more than 100 business leaders as part of his review, which is expected to be published in the coming weeks. Understood to be conscious about the extra burden on small businesses from his recommendation. He declined to comment on the details of his recommendations, but said there was a lot of opportunity for employers to be active around the whole area of a prevention to a much greater extent than is possible for the NHS to do alone. So Charlie said, "The number of people who are suffering from ill health or disability is rising fast. This creates a burden on the state, a burden on companies, and it creates a big burden on individuals. The impact of that is a very serious problem, but also a very fixable one." Sources insisted that no deals had been struck and that any partnerships would depend on the government's response to Sir Charlie's review. Tesco declined to comment. A government spokesman said, "We're reforming the system so it helps people get back to health and back to work by shifting our focus from welfare to work, skills and opportunities." Right, so you may have picked up on a couple of things there. Workplace practitioners is a very interesting word, a very interesting title to give them, because it makes it sound very medical, doesn't it? It makes it sound like they're trained, but according to what they're saying, they don't necessarily have to be medically trained. And this is one of the things which I think could be a bit dubious, because, they are supposed to be a bridge between the employer and the GP. Now, my only concern with this, and of course, if it helps support people who are working, who want the support, then absolutely. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think if you're working and you're having a problem with physically or mentally, I think you should be able to get support from your employer. Absolutely. I think it's absolutely a good idea. My issue is that when does this become a bit of a problem? So as an example, if someone has whatever the medical condition may be, maybe they get a recent diagnosis, or maybe they develop symptoms and need further investigations, what point do they actually say, okay, you can go sick, you can go off sick? I'm wondering, this liaison between the employer and the GP seems to be a little bit worrying to me. The fact that, this is something which the employer is obviously going to have the incentive to keep the employee at work, aren't they? The GP doesn't have an incentive to put people on the sick or put people on benefits. They don't have that incentive. So, they're just trying to treat the people that they get seen by. So it seems to me as though what they're trying to do is take the GP out of the equation instead of bridging this gap. I think what they want to do is they want to send people to these workplace practitioners who are going to say, well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think with certain adjustments, you can still work. You can still come into work, because that's in the employer's best interest. It's not in the employer's best interest to send them to GP to get them signed off for work. So I worry that this may be a barrier to people going off sick for genuine reasons. And that's the issue for me, that this will be used as a way to try and keep people in their jobs beyond the point where they should be in their jobs. My other issue with this is, what incentives are Tesco getting? I mean, they've talked about they haven't done any deals with Tesco's, but what are Tesco's getting out of this? Okay, they might be getting more employers to stay in work. That's obviously something they're going to be looking at. But it makes me wonder why they, have they been given some incentive and perhaps a tax break or something like that in order to do this pilot scheme? So I'm a little bit unsure as to whether this is a good thing or not, particularly if you have issues which do recur and unfortunately mean you have to stop working. I mean, I worked for years. I mean, I worked from the age of 16 right up until very recently when I started caring for my wife. But there were periods of time when my mental health would be so bad I couldn't work. And it would be maybe for a few months, 6 months, and I wouldn't be able to work. It would just be so bad. And I'm just wondering whether under that situation, whether there would be pressure on the employer, pressure on the employee, I should say, by these workplace practitioners to get to stay at work. I understand you're having a bad time, but you really need to stay. But what if they don't? What if they can't stay? Are they going to be made to stay? I don't understand. Anyway, let me know down in the comment section what your thoughts are on this. I would love to hear them. Please do subscribe if you've got this far, and I'll see you next time.